Steve Jobs looked at me across the dinner table and said, "You know what the difference is between a product and a masterpiece? Most people build products to solve problems. I built products to create desires people didn't even know they had." He paused, adjusting his signature black turtleneck. "When we launched the iPhone, people said nobody needed a computer in their pocket. I said they were wrong. They just didn't know they needed it yet. That's not innovation, that's prophecy." Tonight, I'm having dinner with Steve Jobs, co-founder and former CEO of Apple, the man who transformed technology from utilitarian tools into objects of desire. We're at a minimalist restaurant in Cupertino, just miles from Apple Park, and he's about to share the philosophy behind building products that don't just function, they enchant. "Tell me about that philosophy, creating desires people don't know they have," I said, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. Jobs straightened his black turtleneck, that iconic uniform he'd chosen to eliminate decision fatigue from his daily routine. "Most product development starts with market research. What do customers want? What problems need solving? That's backwards thinking." He picked up his water glass, examining it with the same intensity he once applied to every Apple product. Henry Ford said it perfectly. "If I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses." People can only imagine improvements to what already exists. They can't imagine what doesn't exist yet. So how do you identify desires people don't know they have? You study human nature, not market surveys. Humans have fundamental needs that technology can address in ways they've never experienced. The need to connect, to create, to be entertained, to feel important. Jobs set down his glass with characteristic precision. Take the original Macintosh. In 1984, personal computers were intimidating machines with command line interfaces. People thought computers were for programmers and engineers. But I saw something different. I saw the potential for computers to be as easy to use as a toaster. That seems obvious now. Obvious in retrospect, revolutionary at the time. We created the graphical user interface, the mouse, icons you could click. Suddenly, your grandmother could use a computer. We didn't solve an existing problem. We created a new possibility. The first course arrived, something artfully plated that looked almost too beautiful to eat. "This is exactly what I mean," Jobs said, gesturing toward the dish. "This chef didn't ask diners what they wanted for dinner. He imagined an experience that would surprise and delight them. That's what we did with every Apple product." "Walk me through the iPod development. How did you identify that hidden desire?" Music had become a commodity. People were burning CDs, downloading MP3s, but the experience was fragmented and clunky. I saw the desire for your entire music collection to be instantly accessible, beautifully organized, effortlessly portable. Jobs' eyes lit up with the same passion I'd seen in his keynote presentations. Everyone said, "There are already MP3 players on the market." But those were gadgets for tech enthusiasts. I wanted to create something your grandmother, your teenage daughter, and your CEO would all love using. What made the iPod different? 3 things: simplicity, beauty, and emotional connection. The interface was so intuitive a child could use it. The design was so elegant it felt like jewelry. And when you held it, you felt like you had the entire history of recorded music in your pocket. But the real breakthrough was iTunes, wasn't it? iTunes solved the fundamental problem: content. Having a beautiful player means nothing if you can't easily get music for it. We created the first legal, easy, affordable way to buy individual songs digitally. Jobs paused to taste the first course, nodding approvingly at the chef's execution. The music industry thought we were crazy. People won't pay 99 cents for something they can download free illegally. But we understood something they didn't. People want to do the right thing if you make it easier than doing the wrong thing. That philosophy carried over to the iPhone. The iPhone was the ultimate expression of creating desire people didn't know they had. In 2007, people were satisfied with BlackBerries and flip phones. They thought smartphones were for business executives and tech geeks. What did you see that others missed? I saw convergence. Why carry a phone, an iPod, a camera, a GPS device, a web browser, and a gaming device when you could carry one device that did everything better than any single-purpose device? Jobs leaned back, remembering the intensity of that development period. The iPhone project was codenamed Project Purple. For 3 years, we worked in complete secrecy. Even most Apple employees didn't know what we were building. What were the biggest challenges? Everything. Creating a touch interface that responded like magic. Designing a phone without a physical keyboard when everyone said that was impossible. Convincing carriers to give us unprecedented control over the software experience. Tell me about that famous presentation in 2007. January 9th, 2007. I walked on stage at Macworld and said, "Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone." The audience thought I was being hyperbolic. I wasn't. Jobs smiled with the satisfaction of someone who had fundamentally changed the world. I showed them how to navigate using just your fingers, how to pinch to zoom, how to scroll through photos by flicking, things that seem obvious now but felt like magic then. What was the audience reaction? Stunned silence, then eruption. People immediately understood that everything had changed. This wasn't just a new phone, it was a new category of device. The main course arrived, something that clearly reflected the chef's artistic vision rather than traditional expectations. The iPad was even more audacious, Jobs continued. We were telling people they needed a device between a phone and a laptop when most people thought that gap didn't exist. How did you convince them? We didn't convince them with words. We convinced them with experience. The first time someone held an iPad, touched the screen, saw photos come alive with their fingertips, they understood immediately. What made you so confident in these unconventional product decisions? Taste. I spent years developing my aesthetic sensibilities, studying typography, Zen meditation, Bauhaus design principles. Most engineers optimize for functionality. I optimized for the intersection of functionality and beauty. Can you give me an example? The original iMac in 1998. When I returned to Apple, computers were beige boxes that people hid under their desks. We created a translucent, colorful computer that people wanted to display prominently in their homes. That was controversial internally. Hugely controversial. Engineers said, "Why waste money on colored plastic? People care about performance, not appearance." But I knew they were wrong. People care deeply about how things look and feel, even if they can't articulate why. How do you develop that kind of taste? Exposure and experience. I studied calligraphy at Reed College, learning about serif fonts, spacing, typography. That knowledge later influenced the Mac's revolutionary font capabilities. Jobs gestured toward the restaurant's minimalist design. I studied Zen philosophy, which taught me the power of simplicity and empty space. I visited bronze design studios to understand how they created products that felt inevitable rather than designed. What role did your team play in this vision? Everything. I couldn't code, couldn't engineer hardware, couldn't write software, but I could recognize excellence when I saw it and demand it from others. That reputation for being demanding, was it accurate? Absolutely. I would reject prototypes that were 95% perfect because that last 5% was the difference between good and magical. Most people settle for good enough. I never did. Give me an example. The iPhone's home button. We went through dozens of prototypes because the click didn't feel exactly right. The engineering team thought I was obsessing over irrelevant details. But that button's tactile response was part of the phone's personality. How did you maintain that standard while scaling Apple? Culture and hiring. We hired people who shared our commitment to excellence and weren't satisfied with conventional solutions. Then, we created an environment where perfectionism was expected, not exceptional. What about the famous 2x2 matrix for Apple's product line? Simple focus. When I returned in 1997, Apple had dozens of confusing products. I drew a 2x2 matrix, consumer, professional on one axis, desktop portable on the other. 4 products. That's it. That seems almost too simple. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. By focusing on 4 exceptional products instead of dozens of mediocre ones, we could invest all our energy in making each one perfect. How did you decide what not to build? Saying no was more important than saying yes. We received thousands of product proposals, partnership opportunities, and feature requests. Saying no to good ideas let us say yes to great ideas. What was your biggest product regret? Jobs paused thoughtfully. Not moving faster on tablets. We had tablet prototypes in the early 2000s, but decided to focus on the iPhone first. If we had launched the iPad in 2005 instead of 2010, we could have created that market even earlier. What about your biggest product triumph? The iPhone, definitely. It wasn't just a successful product, it redefined an entire industry. Every smartphone since 2007 has been a response to the iPhone. How do you view competition and copying? Picasso said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." We've always been shameless about stealing great ideas and making them better. But you were also aggressive about protecting Apple's innovations. There's a difference between inspiration and imitation. Taking a great idea and improving it shows respect for the original creator. Taking a great idea and cheapening it shows disrespect for customers. What drives your obsession with user experience? Empathy. I try to put myself in the customer's position. What would delight me? What would frustrate me? What would make me fall in love with this product? How do you test that empathy? Use the products obsessively. I carried every iPhone prototype for months, testing every interaction. If something annoyed me as a user, it got fixed before launch. What about the business side? How do you balance artistic vision with commercial success? They're not opposing forces. Beautiful, intuitive products sell better than ugly, confusing ones. Our commitment to design excellence has always driven our financial success. Can you quantify that? When I returned to Apple in 1997, the company was 90 days from bankruptcy. By focusing relentlessly on creating products people would love, we became the world's most valuable company. What's your advice for entrepreneurs who want to create magical products? Start with human needs, not technical capabilities. Ask yourself, what experience do I want to create? Then figure out the technology required to deliver that experience. What else? Develop taste. Study great design in every field: architecture, fashion, automotive, industrial design. Learn to recognize excellence so you can demand it from yourself and others. How important is storytelling in product development? Essential. Every product tells a story about who you are and what you value. The iPhone told the story that you were sophisticated, connected, and forward-thinking. What story did the Mac tell? That you were creative, independent, and willing to think differently. Think different wasn't just an advertising slogan, it was our product philosophy. Looking back, what are you most proud of? Changing how people relate to technology. Before Apple, computers were tools. We made them companions. People have emotional relationships with their devices now. What's your vision for the future? Technology should become increasingly invisible and intuitive. The best interface is no interface. Technology that responds to your intentions before you even articulate them. Any final advice for aspiring innovators? Jobs smiled, straightening his turtleneck one final time. Don't build products to solve existing problems. Build products to fulfill unexpressed dreams. The future belongs to those who can imagine desires that don't exist yet and create experiences that make those desires feel inevitable. As dinner concluded, Jobs reflected on his philosophy of prophetic innovation. The greatest products predict the future by creating it. They don't give people what they want. They give people what they didn't know they wanted until they experienced it. That's the difference between engineering and magic. This evening with Steve Jobs reinforced my understanding that true innovation isn't about incremental improvements to existing solutions. It's about imagining entirely new possibilities and executing them with such perfection that they feel inevitable rather than revolutionary. Don't forget to subscribe and check out the other videos to hear the most private dinner conversations where billionaires reveal their deepest secrets. Which part inspired you the most? Drop it in the comments. Let's figure out how to become billionaires together.